I mean, Channel 4 this week had this dispatches discussion, which was about Muslims and free speech. Now, I suppose that Channel 4 considers itself to be sort of alternative, if there is such a thing still, doesn't it? And very cutting edge and saying things other people won't. I'll be honest with you, I'm becoming very juvenile in my old age. If I think something's coming, I increasingly turn it. I cannot bear to listen to it. And I lasted for about 10 minutes of this. You actually saw it through, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, out of a sense of duty for something I'm writing at the moment, rather than out of any pleasure. It was a monstrous event. I mean, it really can't be stressed enough. Channel 4's dispatches decided to debate the issue of whether or not Muslims are threatening freedom of speech. I had a couple of friends on it, which is why I was watching it, and they had a fairly hard time in the studio. What was absolutely appalling was that halfway through this debate on whether or not Islam is threatening freedom of speech, the presenter, Jon Snow, announced that he had the Danish cartoons in his hand, as if they were some kind of contraband, and announced that there was going to be a vote from the studio audience as to whether or not they should show them, which, after all, in a debate about the issue, is simply informing people. It's not doing anything, it's just informing people what you're discussing. And a vast majority, 60 to 70% of the audience, voted to show the cartoons. At which point Jon Snow opened an envelope from the directors of Channel 4, which said, we don't want to provoke anyone, therefore the cartoons won't be shown on Channel 4. I mean, spinelessness has never seemed more obvious, but what's more obvious even than that, even than the spinelessness, was the sheer sort of, I mean, gobsmacking irony of this. And at the end of the evening, the audience voted that Islam is not censoring freedom of speech. Well, if Islam is not censoring freedom of speech, we should have the cartoons up all the time. We should be saying what we want to say about their prophet. But they don't. Channel 4 was demonstrating that they are kowtowing to Islam, and are being cowed by Islamists, that they are cowards, and that in the face of this, when this is demonstrated live on air, no one even laughs.
But to be fair to Channel 4, I mean, South Park, which a lot of people would say has conservative edge to it, and certainly a programme that's not afraid to offend people. It'd be hard to accuse them of being cowardly. Now, they were going to show, I'm not sure they were going to show the cartoons or something involving Muhammad, but they came to the conclusion that, in fact, that was too dangerous for them too. And I wouldn't. And no. They, in the end, decided that they could show Christ defecating on the American flag, and that would be the best way of showing the freedoms of America. As opposed, that was the best way of dealing with the problem of Islam, because they couldn't show it. And I think it's a general, almost a health and safety problem. These large organisations who mediate our experience can't afford, on behalf of their employees, to put those employees at risk by showing these things. Yeah, so it's very hard for them to be brave on behalf of other people.
I think that's such a good point, and I think there really is genuine fear about those health and safety issues. That's actually the most efficient way of putting it. However, isn't it incredible that we're only really just beginning to deal with these issues of free speech, however many years down the line we are after the invasion of Iraq, when clearly for me, again, it sort of beggared belief that we weren't doing with the collision of a liberal humanist tradition with an Islamist tradition. They are in total conflict. There is no meeting point. There is no nice conversation to be had. And if broadcasters, I mean, they're now having to confront these issues, whether or not they wish to, because there's such a genuine groundswell of opinion in popular culture. There's a growing awareness that these are impossible contradictions. And yet, so however many years later, finally, it's creeping into the broadcast mainstream. Yes. It should have been dealt with so long ago.
Well, unfortunately, I think the groundswell is still, when you're talking to people on the street, they're like, we shouldn't offend anybody, we shouldn't offend anybody. But they don't consider their rights to be of any importance. And would these have these individuals, the only people who don't have rights to freedom of speech are non-Muslims. I mean, and that's scary to me. But at the same time, you know, the individual news companies or organizations that are afraid to put it out for fear of retribution is so sad, because it seems to me, if anything, everybody should be showing it. It's all of our responsibilities to show the cartoons, so you can't kill us all at once.
Exactly, and you need, sort of being unified in the face of this would be the best way to deal with it. But there is one important thing to stress from this as well, which is that is that what Channel 4 and so on have been propagating is the notion that you have the right in this society not to be offended. You have no such right. You have a right to life, you have a right to certain other freedoms, including the freedom of speech, which is one that is now being trampled on a daily basis. But you do not have the right to not be offended. There is no such right in this country, and I hope there never will be. And there is certainly not an exclusive right of Islam not to be offended.
Well, I think the thing is, it's actually the evidence is not very encouraging, is it? Because I mean, next week, I think, is the second anniversary of Theo van Gogh's death, isn't it?
Murder.
Yes, who was murdered for making the film Submission. I don't see any great sort of standing up, if you like, for our particular
Not one Hollywood actor, not one of the directors bothered to show solidarity with a member of their own profession.
No.
They were too busy showing solidarity with fake causes.
Yes, or McCarthyism, actually, in the case of George Clooney.